I'm Karen Roberson, and we're going to do this webinar is on the tax year 2022 1099 processing for Sage 100. And welcome back to those of you who've attended some of our other year-end webinars, and welcome to those of you who are new to our year-end series for the 1099s. It's nice to see I've got some familiar names on here, and there's some new ones too. So I've got just a few housekeeping notes. Your phone lines are going to be muted, and you do have the ability to ask questions. Each of you might have to move your mouse to see it, but down at the bottom, you've got well, usually it's at the bottom, but you've got a bar for the Zoom meetings, and one of those options on there is Q&A. So if you have questions for me, just click on that and type in your question, and at different points, I'll try to take a look at those, and then at the end of the webinar, we'll go through and we'll make sure we can get everything answered. And if we do run out of time, or if there's some things I don't know the answers to, then we'll make sure we make note of those so that we can get back to you about that. And after the webinar, we are recording this, so we will send out a link to everybody that's attended and also everybody that signed up for it. And you are welcome to share that link with other people in your office, or if you just would like to rewatch the webinar at your leisure. I think that's all the housekeeping. So I'm going to start going through these. So I've got some PowerPoint slides with some information that's related to your Sage 100 and the 1099 forms, and then Sage 100 updates, you know, when new versions come out, or new 1099 forms, changes to the 1099 forms. Sometimes that requires updates to your Sage system. So we're going to talk about some of those updates. And then we're going to take a look in Sage, and I'm going to show you 1099 vendor history. And I'm actually going to take you through and show you about printing 1099 forms through Atrix. And then we'll come back to the PowerPoint and we'll talk about some more important things for the form requirements. So if you don't have the opportunity to jot down all of the notes, remember you're going to get a link to this, so you'll be able to go back and find details that you need. So thanks again for joining us. And remember, you've got that Q&A section to type in any questions you have. So what is required to process 1099s from Sage 100? You should be on a supported version of Sage. So right now, Sage is supporting version 2022, which is the most recent version, and then 2021 and 2020. So back in 2020, the IRS made a big change and created, or they didn't actually create, they resurrected 1099 NEC, which is a non-employee compensation form. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, but you'll notice how each of these versions have some specific numbers after them. So like on this slide, 2022.0, you need to be on 2022, and that .2 refers to a product update. That gives you all the most recent changes that have been made to the 1099 forms. Depending on where you're looking at in Sage for your version number, you may see it listed as 7.1. So 7.1 is 2022. If you've got version 2021, you should have product update 5. Well, actually, it's product updates 3, 4, or 5. And then if you've got version 2020, you should have product update 5 or 6. And there is an IRD that's going to be released next week by Sage. I don't have any of those details on what all they're releasing. I am going to make some assumptions as we go through the rest of this webinar. But as we get that information from Sage and we get more details, then we will send out emailers. So please keep an eye on your email box for important information. Sometimes those IRDs are required and everybody needs to install them. And sometimes they're only for aspects of the 1099s that your particular company might not need. Okay, so as always, it's not always smart to install these IRDs on your own. Many of our clients have customizations and enhancements, and if you install the IRD, it is possible that it could break some of those. So make sure you contact our offices, and we will research tell you if it's safe for you to do it, and if not, we'll find out what needs to be done. And I'll give you more information at the end of the webinar about how to contact us for those. Okay, so let's talk about the most recent changes to the 1099 forms. So the 1099 miscellaneous and the 1099 dividend forms, it's really a very minor change that they made. There's the FATCA box. It's the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. They have renumbered that to box 13, and I'm going to go to the next slides to show you pictures worth 1,000 words. So this was the old 1099 form. You had this FATCA filing requirement, and there was the box. And then the excess golden parachute payments was box 13. So all they've done is they've labeled that FATCA box as number 13, and then they've renumbered these other boxes, 14, 15, 16, 17. So not a big deal. And this is where we are assuming that the IRD that's coming out will update your 1099 screens on the vendors to reflect those correct box numbers. I'll show you shortly. So if that is all that is involved, we may not have to install those IRDs. But again, I don't know that for sure. So just keep your eyes on your email box, and we will update you on those details. Okay. I am going to remind you a little bit more about the NEC form. That's a non-employee compensation. So it's the IRS resurrected it back in 2020. So if you are on a recent version of Sage, any of those supported versions we looked at before, you're going to be fine. But if you, for whatever reason, happen to be on an older version, what used to be on those older versions on the miscellaneous form box 7 has now been moved to the new 1099 NEC form. So it's important because that is what most of our clients need, is that 1099 NEC form. Now the miscellaneous form is still important because it does have rent and a few other things that many people have to report. So if you are on an older version that doesn't have the NEC form, then you need to contact us so that we can talk with you about what those options are. So I think most of you are probably on correct version for this, so I'm not going to dive into details. Just let us know if you need assistance, and we'll work with you. So we do have options. And I'll give you some more information at the end about who to contact. Erin Stout, she assists with doing software upgrades and getting all that coordinated. So if you email her and put upgrade request, she'll put you on the road to do an update. Just be aware that at this point, where about mid-December, there's not enough time to get you updated. But again, we do have some options. All right, so then let's got some more requirements for 1099 processing. So Atrix is what Sage uses. Atrix is an outside company, an outside software, and Sage takes information and pushes it out to their program. You can run it all within Sage, but Atrix also does have its own standalone programs that could be used. If you do it that way, it does not communicate with Sage. So in order to process those Atrix forms, you have to have a workstation install on your computer, or anybody who's going to process those 1099 forms needs to have a workstation set up, performed for it. So if you've got a new computer from last year, we may need to get it installed, and we may need assistance from your IT, because you have to have permission to be able to download and install Atrix. And then every year there are also Atrix updates. Actually, it's more than every year. When we get to this time of year, it seems like every day you go in, you've got some new updates you have to install. So the computer has to have sufficient permissions to run those updates. You must be current on your software maintenance plan with Sage in order for that to run. And it does connect with the internet, so you have to have an active internet connection. And we'll take a look at this in a few minutes. But you have to make sure that in your accounts payable options in Sage 100 that you have set up for the 1099 payments. And I will show you more information about that. So, take a look. Do you have any questions yet? And we do not. So I'm going to exit the PowerPoint at this point, and we're going to go into Sage. Moment here. All right, here is our Sage 100. And I'm going to start off. If you're not sure what version of Sage you're running, if you go up and you click on File, and then you go down to Run, you type *info, so your asterisk info, click OK. And this shows me that I am running version 7.0. So that this is my version 2021. And then for those of you who also have payroll, payroll has its own set of version numbers. I'm sure you all watched Christie's webinar earlier this week. And if not, if you let us know, we can send you a link to that. All right. So I am in this This is ABC Distribution and Service Corp, company ABC. This is a sample company that comes with Sage. So I say that so that you realize that some of the information may not necessarily make sense. You know, as I'm working on projects and working with clients, you know, I do different things in my computer. So I've tried to clean things up, but you may notice something might seem a little illogical. And somebody's asking me, my Sage looks different. Am I on the most recent version? Yes, I am on the most recent version. Mine looks different because I have set my menu system to look differently. I find that the default menu system when I'm doing webinars doesn't display very well. It's very pale and it's hard to see what's going on. So I purposely have set my menu system differently. And that is another set of webinars that we do to fine tune your 100 and use it more effectively. Okay, so I'm going to show you real quick. In the setup menu, we have accounts payable options. And over here on the first tab in the right, I've got 1099 reporting. So the most important thing is if you don't have that clicked, you're not going to be able to do anything with 1099s. And then your default 1099 calendar year. Each year, you should update that, and as we go through in a little while, you'll see how you can do that automatically without coming in here to the setup options. So we're in 2022, and let's go into vendor maintenance now. So I have this vendor here, All Climate. On tab 2, over here on the right-hand side, we have vendor type. So you define if it's a business or an individual, and then based on what you choose there, this will either ask for a Social Security number or your federal ID number. And then the next thing to do is define your default form. So the non-employee comp, that's the one that if you're on an older version, you won't see that. But all of you will see the miscellaneous form, the interest, and the dividend form. So you need to make sure you choose the right form. Be aware that it defaults to miscellaneous. So every year we find that we have people who they've defined that a vendor is a 1099 vendor, but they don't necessarily set it to the right form or the right box. So depending on which form you have, it will ask, you've got your list of which box numbers you need to record their information in. So a little trick for those of you who don't already know, to see what those boxes are. Once you define this here, what type form it is, if I go to my 1099 history, it shows me what each of those boxes are. So box 1 is the non-employee comp. That's what used to be the miscellaneous box 7. Box 4 is your federal income tax, 5 is your state income tax, 7 state income, and 6 is your state year number. So I'm going to switch this over to the miscellaneous form. So this is what I was referring to earlier. So calendar year 2022, these are all the boxes that are currently, actually they're the ones that were on the 2021 form. So the new 2022 form, this box where it says 13 is your excess parachute payments, I think that the IRD is going to just update this screen so that it will change this to say 14 is your excess, and then 15 will be your non-qualified. So all of these box numbers will change. Again, I don't know if I can say this too many times. Keep an eye on your email boxes, because once we get the details of the IRDs, then we'll send an email out to everybody, and we'll know at that point how urgent it is to get those IRDs installed. Okay, I'm going to point out something else, because we also find that oftentimes people don't have the 1099 set to the right calendar year. So if right here, box 7, see that's blank now. If I go back, 2021 is the same, 2020 is the same. But if I went back to 2019, this was back when the non-employee compensation did go into box 7. So I'm only pointing this out because I see every year there are people who don't have the calendar year. So when they bring, it's like, I don't have the right information. So I don't want you to panic. It's okay. It records everything in the right year. And if you find that you have set something to the wrong box, I'm going to go back to default. So if you didn't set up a vendor, or maybe you set them up mid-year, or you're just now setting them up, that's okay. You can go back and you can manually enter what those payments should be, or what those payments were, not what they should be, but what you've paid. So there is, on the history tab, this will show you. Now this one may have been a bad one to start with. This one. So this is another vendor, and I can see that for 2022, I had $60.30 worth of payments to them so far. Go back to my additional tab, and they're set to a miscellaneous form box 1. So if I go to my 1099 history, I can see, okay, box 1's my rent. So it's recorded the $60.30. But let's say, you know, I'm just now setting them up and it wasn't in there. I can just look up that information, and there is a history report that you can run to see what all of your payments are so far this year, and it will record that going forward for you. And you can come in, put in what it is as of now, and if you have any more payments the rest of the year, it will add to those. So just make sure you get that timing right. Let's see. I'm going to refer to my cheat sheet, make sure I didn't miss anything. So there, this again is based on what version you've got. You may not see all of the information that I have here on my screen. So the payer made direct sales, that was added, if that one was 2019 or 2020 when that got added. And electronic consent signed, at this point everybody should have that one. That is just, if you have to send a document to your vendors if you want to email their forms. And this is just to show that, hey, I do have a signed form from them that I can send the 1099 electronically. This is that FATCA that we were talking about earlier. If this applies, then you click that checkbox, and so far I've not worked with any uses that. Now, something that is a little bit newer, this DBA name and address information. Let's see, that came out in 2021. So if you are running an older well, if you're running version 2020 or anything prior to that, you won't see this DBA information. And that's okay. You don't have to have this to process the 1099s. But if you do have a vendor who has a doing business as name that's different than the name you have here, then you can simply put that in here. And if it's a different address, you can put this here. When you run your 1099s, if there's anything in this DBA section, this is what will print on the 1099s. If this is blank, that's okay. It will come and it will pull this name here and pull this address. So it's not essential that you have this DBA section. All right. Sure I have anything else here. So let me go to a vendor that's not been set up yet, the 1099, so I can show you a little bit from scratch. So we'll say Tushwaterhouse. I've just started doing business with them earlier this year, and we neglected to get their 1099 information. So I can look here on my history tab, and for whatever reason, 2025 is what our sample data is. So that's where my history is for this particular one. So $7,500. I can see here we paid them. So I can go over here to tab 2. I can say, okay, they are a business and they are a non-employee comp. And I make sure I've got it set on the right box. That is box 1. And if I have their taxpayer ID number now, I go ahead and type it in. If not, I can get it from them and come back. So once I do that, I can click on my 1099 history. And because I made those changes, it wants to make sure that we save those. So I'm saying yes. And then I can just type in the amount of their payment. Now, I'm going to make an important point here. From this point forward, when I do an invoice for this vendor, it will start recording the fact that that invoice is for 1099. And in a moment, I'll go into invoice data entry and show you what I mean with that. Now, what could happen is I may have some open invoices out here. This invoice has not been paid yet. When I look at the invoice history on that, it would show me that it was not set to be a 1099 payment. So if I put that $7,500 in, then next week I come along and I pay this invoice, that $100 is not going to be recorded. The reason for that is I'm going out to my invoice data entry now, and this is also true of any invoices you get through purchase order. Okay, now that I have assigned this vendor to 1099, it defaults on the invoice to be what I assigned. You know, this is a non-employee comp, box 1. So when that other invoice that I was just showing you was created, when that invoice number 1 was created, my 1099 payment form, it said none. So therefore, when it's paid, it's not going to record that $100. So if you didn't have somebody set up, make sure you take into account any open invoices. Another point to make here is, like we've got quite a few of our clients who have employees where, maybe they come in and they do some after-hour cleaning, and that goes, they get a 1099 for that. But then maybe they also get some reimbursement for some materials that they paid for on their own, and it's just a reimbursement. So you need to make sure in that kind of situation that you come in here and you change that 1099 payment to none for those things that don't get recorded as 99 payment. And then Sage takes care of it. It knows based on your check date, which year to put your 1099s in. So it's okay if you wait and you don't do anything with it in December. I mean, obviously, the sooner you get started on it, usually is the better. But if you don't get started on any of it until January, that's okay, because based on your payment date, it will record the 1099 amount in the appropriate year. Remember, I showed you all earlier, it keeps track of each year. So I can go backwards, I can look forward. Anything for 2023 yet, so I'm saying no to that for now. Okay. And makes sense. If any of you need help with it, just let us know. And we've got a question in here. So somebody's asking, if you have a vendor all year, but you change the status to 1099 NEC in June, it will only pull amounts from when it was changed in June going forward. That is correct. The amounts from January to May, you will have to go in and add that to what it's accumulated. And that actually takes me to the next thing I was going to show you. In the reports menu, we have there's your payment history report. So it's down near the bottom of your report list. So payment history report. One of the options, if you've set all of your vendors properly to show their 1099s, you have an option here to print just your 1099 vendors. And then I can change this to say, hey, I want to print everything that I've processed for this year. And then this is, I highly recommend that you run this report before you start trying to process the 1099 forms. So this shows me vendors I've got set up and what my payments were. 2022, that's the only thing I've processed. If I were to go back and run that for 2025, since that's what Sage's sample data has, you'll see more information, a little closer to what you will see on your report. And I forgot to change that. Here in the upper part of the report, you've got these options to sort report by, so you can sort it by your vendor number or vendor name if you prefer. Now I can see my first 1099 vendor's airway, and that shows me everything that was processed made in 2025. Yeah. So just to recap a little bit, your payment history report, um, you want to change your sort report by to either your vendor number or your vendor name. And if you've already appropriately set all of your vendors to 1099s, then you can just click this checkbox so it only prints those. If you're not sure that you've got everybody set and you want to see everybody that you've paid this year, then you can just leave that off. And then make sure you set your starting and ending period. Down here, the report that says which 1099 the vendor will be getting the amount. So when you get to that point, I'm going to show you. So when you think you've got all the information in there, here in the reports menu, you have your Form 1099 tax reporting. This is what most people will, once they think they've got everything set, they'll come in and they'll run this and they'll print them to plain paper as a double check to make sure they've got everything set appropriately. So show you this real quick since it's on here. You've got, if you wanted to go back and print something from a prior year, you would choose history. So Sage keeps track based on your setup options, how many years you're keeping your history. So you need to make sure you change your form type to whichever one you need. To miscellaneous, you can only do one at a time. And make sure that your 1099 calendar year is set to 2022. And it's when you're doing your final run of your 1099 forms, you've got your minimum year-to-date payments. So, like $600. I don't know if that's for all of these, but I know at least for the rent royalties, that's the minimum payment. It's okay to have it print everybody just so you can get that initial list. So at this point, I am going to accept. And what it's doing at this point is it's gathering the information for my miscellaneous 1099 vendors, and it's taking that information and it's pushing it over into Atrix. Now, most of you, if you haven't already been in it, it's going to come up and it's going to tell you that you need to run an update. And that's where you need to make sure that you have the proper permissions on your computer. So once those updates are run, then it takes you through this wizard. So, you could do a test drive. And you can choose to do just the first 25, or you can do all of your recipients. Or I can just say, nope, I'm ready to start processing. I just do next, and I double check, make sure that my EIN is in there correctly. And then you have to tell it if you are sending one file, or if you've got multiple companies and you need to send them together. Next, single, and make sure that your information again is correct here. Company name, if you've got a DBA name, your address, your contact name and phone number, title and email. Make sure you've got all of that in there properly. So it's pulling that information from company maintenance. So if any of it is incorrect, you can just go into your company maintenance and change that. So I believe all of you are filing for your company. You're not a third party. You are a then you just check that box. Next. If your state requires you to record 99 payment, then you would have to add your details there. That. And do you have any recipients who are going to only receive the electronic 1099 forms? So I'm going to say no to that because I've not set that up. And then this is up to you. Social Security numbers and EINs. Do you want to print them in full, truncate, and I don't know what an RN is. So just, you want them to print recipient ID numbers. So do you want them to print zeros or leave them blank if there's nothing there? I don't really understand that question because it doesn't let you process without it. Okay, so what it's doing now is it's taking all that information and it's populating it into this grid. And I'm going to shift this over so you have a little bit more. So notice up here in this corner, it's telling me to verify my recipient taxpayer identification numbers. And see how that's highlighted in blue. So this lets me know that there's nothing there. So when I click on next, it tells me if I have anything invalid. So this is telling me that there's an error found, and some things it will let you go on. This one is kind of important. So it won't let me continue until I fix it. So I tell it to go back and correct, and I just put in. And if you do have to fill that in manually here, make sure you make a note to go back and update that on your vendor so you don't have the problem again next year. Okay, so I've got that. So I do next again. And notice now it's changed. It's saying check, verify that your check FEIN is checked. So basically, this is the section that's in blue, so that's what it's talking about. So it recognizes that this is a business, so it checks that box because that's one of the things on the 1099 form. And if these were individuals, then that would not be checked. So that's just another way for you to double check, make sure you've got those vendors set up properly in vendor maintenance. So I do next again, and now it's telling me to verify their names. If they were individuals, then I would have their, I'd have a name here. And since it is their businesses, I've got company name. You don't need both, you've got one or the other. Next. Now it has me verifying addresses. So it's really easy to go through and glance and make sure that you've got everybody set appropriately. And so now, tell me to verify the income boxes. I'm going to, other way, see everything. So this is a good way of verifying. So if you've gone through and you've looked at your payment history and you figured out how much you should be reporting for the 1099 payments, this gives us the total right here. So it also will differentiate between the different boxes. So based on your setup on the vendor, it knows which box to record these things in. Now, if you find that you've missed something, you can edit those amounts here. You don't have to go back to the vendor maintenance and edit the amounts in that 1099 history box. You can do it from here. That's okay. Through this, and now it wants to make sure that the state is correct because some states require more information. And I like that in blue. So it's checking to make sure that if I had any state income, that has been recorded properly. Now, we get through to the Atrix. So Atrix, as I said, is a different company. It's not part of Sage. Atrix works with many, many softwares, and it can even be run standalone. You know, wouldn't pull information from Sage 100 if you did that. And you can do several things with Atrix. You can use Atrix just so that you print out your forms yourself. So you can buy forms and print them yourself, and there is no cost if you do that. So I do want to point out, though, that we have discovered working with clients over the years that depending on how many you need to print, a lot of times it is cheaper to pay Atrix to print them and mail them for you. So you will still be able to print a copy for yourself. But it's just something to consider. And when we go back to the PowerPoint, I'm going to talk more about the forms and what types of forms and all of that. So just sit tight for a few minutes on that. Now, if you do choose to have Atrix do everything, then you have to set up an account with Atrix, and it's really very easy. Now, there's also, some of you have to e-file. If you have, I don't remember off the top of my head what that minimum is, but you know, depending on what that minimum number is, you may have to e-file. And if that's the case, you will have to pay Atrix to do the e-filing. So I'm going to show you as we go through these options here. So I do next. And this is where I can say, hey, Atrix, do my complete 1099 e-filing service. I just had a couple of them. I had two. So the minimum that it will cost is $24.95. So depending on how many recipients you have, you know, that's where you need to evaluate. Is it cheaper for you to go buy the forms and you have to pay the postage to send them? You know, and that's not even taking into account, you know, the cost of your time. Now, if you do not want Atrix to process, then here under other options, we can tell it we want, I could pick and choose what I want what I want Atrix to do. So I can say, no, I'm not going to e-file. I'm going to print my recipient 1099 copies, and I want to print the federal 1099 and 1096. And then if you've got states you needed to print them for, you can choose that too. So you can look here and you can see what your costs are. Yeah, so you'll be aware of what's going to happen. And if I had chosen to let Atrix do all my e-filing, then it brings up the prompt where I would create my account. And then you have to provide a credit card, and they'll charge your credit card, and then you get access to a portal, and you can check the status of all of it. they've really made it pretty easy. But you'll notice that they give you lots of options about, hey, do I want to have Atrix do it or not? So just, be a little patient with that. And then this is just an opportunity for you to look at what you chose to do. If we were e-filing, then my e-filing would be listed here. And at this point, it's going in and it's giving me my forms. So it steps you through. And again, when we get to back to the PowerPoint, I'll talk about what forms you need to buy if you're going to be printing your own. So see, I've got report 1 of 5. I've got my federal 1099 miscellaneous. At this point, what many of our clients do is they take each of these and they print them to PDF. And this is also where if you just want to print them to plain paper to start with, so you can go back and verify and double check everything before you process them for real. And I am not going to go through because this just takes us through all the forms that you need, and you tell it to print, and then you go next step, and it just takes you to the next form. So I'm going to close out of this, and I'm going to cancel my reports. And then we've got some questions down here, so let me go see those. Okay, so somebody was asking me, so this screen that I've actually got open here, they're asking if that will update the vendor maintenance, and it will not. If you change anything here, you need to go back to vendor maintenance and update that. And I was asking, is there an AP report that lists all vendors with 1099 and not? So no, well, so there is a vendor listing. Let me see if that has. That doesn't give us an option here. So if any of you are familiar with doing custom lookups, again, that I don't have time to do that right now. A custom lookup is what we often do to get a list of what the 1099 settings are. So if you need help with that later, you can just email tech support. And somebody said if they are not integrated, it sounds like it would be advisable to edit at the vendor maintenance screen for the history to be accurate. Yes, that is the best thing to do. And then somebody was asking if you see all this Atrix info if you're doing a test run. You don't see all those options, do the e-filing and have Atrix process when you're doing the test run. Just when you're doing it live. Okay. Starting to get late. I hope this part has been helpful. Let me go back to this PowerPoint. More important things here. So, do you have to e-file to use Atrix? The answer is no. Printing the forms is free. But if you do e-file, you do have to register with Atrix, and there is a fee, and the minimum you'll be charged is the $24.95. You can, ahead of time, go to efile.atrix.com and set yourself up, or you can do it while you're processing the 1099s. And to get to the fee schedules at atrix.com/partner/sage100, you can get to the fees there to look at ahead of time. Atrix does have bundled options. So if you have multiple companies and you want to get a better deal for the price, you can call Atrix and set up something with them for better pricing. And like I said earlier, we have a lot of clients to let Atrix do the e-filing, print the forms, and mail them off, just because it can be less costly to do it that way, and it is definitely less labor intensive. Okay, so what type of forms do you need to order? This is important, because every year we've got somebody who buys some forms that are the wrong ones. So you have to get the blank perforated 4 up, and this includes the red print federal copy, and it also includes the blank perforated recipient copy. So keyword there being, it's got to be blank, got to be perforated, and it's got to be the 4 up. And some of the packets, depending on where you get them, may include the envelopes. Now, Sage, Sage is fairly competitive on those prices. So if you wanted to just order them from Sage, if you go to sagechecks.com, you can order them through there. And remember, you may need to get both the 1099 miscellaneous and the 1099 NEC forms. And you can get the ones with the pre-printed backs, or you can print the instructions on a separate piece of paper. Okay, there is some more information here that gets into a lot of detail. I am not going to go through this all with you. Just a reminder, you will get a link to this recording, so if you need any of this information, you can go, you'll get to that point. So, excuse me, we have sent out emailers for anybody who wants assistance with processing the 1099s or anything related to year end. If you did not get that emailer, or if you missed it, then you can let us know and we can send resend the email to you. We get rather busy, the end of December and all through January. So we do require that you make an appointment with us. We have some people that are dedicated to doing the year-end processing. The emailer, asks what your preference is as far as the timing and when you'd like to schedule an appointment. And, it asks all these questions here too. So we do schedule those appointments on a first come, first served basis. So the earlier you submit your request, the better the chance that you'll get the appointment that you want. So if you've not received the email, if you email tech support at oasisky.com, then we'll make sure that you get the email with the link for appointment. Okay, so that didn't take our. So we're actually closed on the 26th and January the 2nd for the holidays. And we've got here the email address, techsupport@oasisky.com. If you've got somebody that you work with regularly here, we'll do our best to help you with that too. And can't answer what you need, then we get it forwarded for you. And you can also call us at 502-429-6902, extension 227. And we went a little bit long. My apologies for that. And Falana put in the chat a link so that you could sign up for those year-end appointments. And if you have any questions after this, feel free to email tech support, and most of us can answer just about any questions related to the 1099s. And if not, we know where to get the answers for you. So I appreciate everybody's time. Sorry I went over a few minutes. Have a good rest of your day.